Our second scripture today is from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 55, verses 1 to 9. Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. You that have no money, come buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me. Eat what is good. Delight yourself in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen so that you may live. I will make with you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast, sure love for David. See, I have made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and a commander for the peoples. See, you shall call nations that you do not know, and nations that do not know you shall run to you, because of the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their way and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them return to the Lord, that he may have mercy on them. To our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For your thoughts are not my thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. This is one of my favorite passages. You may remember I've preached on a couple of times here before, and the last time the sermon title was Free Beer and Chicken. Got interest from the Mormons about that. And it found its way circling. Someone took a picture of the title out there in the front, and it went around the internet, and I got emails from fundamentalist Christians all over wanting to know why we were giving out free beer and chicken in church. And what kind of church is that? But this passage, it brings back some memories for me, and some of them are really, really pleasant ones. It starts with a barker at a marketplace calling out to try to attract the customers. And I remember occasionally when I was a kid, not very often, but these produce trucks would come through our neighborhood, and the guys would shout and sing from the back of the truck to encourage us to buy their vegetables. And that's a tricky thing in inner city Pittsburgh, because there are no doors at street level. To get to our front door, they had to go up 3 flights of stairs. And to get to the front door of the people across the street from us, they had to go downstairs. So they were running back and forth all the while shouting out strawberries and cherries, green beans, and whatever else they were selling. I think of our visit to Haiti and being in the Iron Market in Port-au-Prince, where we obviously stood out as tourists. And every salesperson, as they saw us go by, would call to us, and some would come up and kind of grab a hold and say, "Don't you want to come? Now look at my booth and what I have for sale." Then another experience, Cheryl was at a meeting in San Juan, Puerto Rico, years and years ago. And I got to go along as the dutiful spouse. What a terrible thing to have to do. And Old Town San Juan is just what you imagine an old, sleepy, delightful Caribbean city would be, as long as the cruise ships aren't in. But as soon as the cruise ships would dock, every little shop had someone standing out front shouting, "Come, bring your key, and if your room number matches our special number today, you get a discount." And of course, every message, every room number was a special discount, I'm sure. In India, they didn't use that scattershot approach, but instead would come right up to us as individuals and say, don't you want to buy a map to the whatever, or whatever it was they were selling? My favorite, though, of all of these was the covered market in Leicester, England, which is the largest outdoor market in the UK and Europe, and it's basically a farmer's market under a tent. And it's open, I think, was it every day?
I think so.
I think it was every day. And there was no refrigeration there, so anything that didn't sell by the end of the day, they had to pack up and take with them. So as it got to the end of the day, each little booth, they'd start to drop their price and they'd shout it out to try to get people's attention, so that if you were really looking for those Scottish strawberries, and man, are they good, you would know that they were only £1.95 over here, and then this other person who still had a lot of strawberries, they'd say, well, £1.50, and back and forth they'd go, and we would go at the end of the day and hope to get the best price, but of course you had to be careful because the best strawberries might all be gone if you wait too long. And back and forth we would go. Then there are those more modern versions of the barkers, aren't they? They come on our television every 10 minutes for 30 seconds. Sometimes 2 of them, sometimes as many as 8 of them for 30 seconds, telling us what we need to buy to make us happy and whole and popular and influential and look really, really, really good yet again. And some of the things they tell us to buy, you can't even buy. Tell your physician that they need to get you this medication. Wait a second, I didn't know I had that. But I better check. We know the more static version in newspapers or magazines. And then there is the most sophisticated ones of all on our computers, where they track the websites you visit. They know what purchases you've made. They know what browser you use, which indeed does tell them a lot about who and what kind of person you are. Maybe they even read your emails. They say they don't. I don't believe them for a second. And so their ads can be targeted to exactly what you looked at yesterday. So be careful what websites you end up on. The seller at Leicester had only price, quality of merchandise, and, granted, the charisma of the salesperson to sell their stuff. The commercials we see on television, they have test markets and psychological studies and tons of money. And the computers, well, they have you. But all of them are after one thing. They want to sell you something to make you, or at least they want to make you believe if you buy something, your life will be better. And it is part of the human condition, isn't it, to seek meaning and purpose. And the easier it is to get there, the more likely we are to grab a hold of it. But we all know, as often as not, as we grab a hold of it, we find that there's nothing to grab. At Isaiah's time, the people were in the diaspora. They'd been deported all over the Babylonian Empire. Their families were destroyed. Their lovers were separated. The person you wanted to commit your entire life to had gotten carried off somewhere else than where you were going, or worse than that, they had been killed. Everything that gave meaning and value to life had been either taken away or destroyed. Business owners watched as the hard work they had done for years and years and years was like water poured out on the desert sand, and everything was being destroyed. They had all gone, and then they got taken to these foreign lands and interspersed with people who had exactly the same experience, except they had no shared language, no shared culture, no shared history, no shared religion, no shared memories, no shared dreams. And so they found themselves, all of them, with no hope. Boy, imagine how the advertisers would have salivated at that. We've got folk who have nothing left. We can sell them everything. All we need to do is convince them. Their families were gone. Their traditions were gone. Their community was gone. Their social networks were gone. At first thought, it feels as if these people are about as foreign to us as they could possibly be. After all, we haven't experienced that kind of disruption in our lives. But I think we're more alike than it is initially obvious. Because if there is one characteristic of Americans right now, it is that we are cut off from community, and we are disconnected from those around us. I can't tell you how often, walking through our little condo complex, I pass someone, and I know they live in the complex because I've seen them getting their mail. I have no idea what their name is, I don't know what their story is, and we smile at each other and we might say hello, but nobody stops to say, hey, what's your name? What's your story? And on we go. We work, and we come home too tired to interact with our spouse, our lover, our children, our parents. We're inundated with bad news from every direction, and so we get tempted to just shut ourselves off and push it all away. We're afraid that what we do have will be taken away by the whims of nature or the whims of the marketplace. And so we find ourselves in a siege mentality where we're putting up walls to keep ourselves safe, or at least to convince ourselves that we're safe. We have health issues that keep us from interacting perhaps as much as we would like. I don't know about you, but I'm getting to the point where I'm starting really to not like driving at night. I just don't like my eyes anymore in that. And realizing I'm probably not middle-aged anymore. And then we have schedules. Schedules that are just so full of so many things. Even kids have calendars. And if you have grandchildren, you know that. You'll talk to your children about doing something, and they'll say something that was completely foreign to those of us from earlier generations. Well, first I have to check the kids' calendars. What? Well, they might have a game, or they might have a school event, or, and down the list it goes. And then, when I was in seminary, one of my professors said something that I think was one of the most wise things that I've ever heard in my life. She said, as an adult, it's hard to make friends. So pick people that you want to be friends with and court them. And I still hold that advice. Except you try to court someone and they've got all those other issues too. And they say, you know what, I'm sorry, I just don't have time, or I don't have energy. Or, yeah, I'd love to have coffee with you. How about 2023? On Thursday, the 14th of... Oh, no, wait, that's not good. And on we go. And so we find ourselves, it's so easy to retreat into cocoons that promise to keep us safe, to embrace the dreams that the advertisers have pushed on us, and to end up empty and alone. And isolation becomes the dominant characteristic of modern life. In the year 2000, Robert Putnam wrote a book with a telling title, Bowling Alone: The Collapse and Revival of American Community. And of course, many of us are of an age here where we remember bowling leagues were important. People did that. They got together. I don't think they do that anymore. I don't know.
Harriet used to be.
Yeah, Harriet used to bowl, but I bet you don't bowl anymore, right? Do they still have leagues like that? They do? Okay. But in that book, which was based on an article that he'd written some 4 or 5 years before that, he outlines the way that our society mitigates against social connections. And if we go back to Leicester, back to the UK, the British government has done something that's really, really telling in this area. They now have an official position in the British government called the Minister of Loneliness. Because they have discovered that it is a debilitating problem in Great Britain. And doing studies, they found that very, very many, especially for the elderly, very many elderly folk in Great Britain go for a full week or longer with literally zero human interaction. And they're finding that the ones who were able would go to the store, not because they needed to buy something, but so they could say hello to the checkout person and have human interaction. The search for meaning and purpose goes on, but the answers seem too long hidden. And they seem indeed to be becoming more and more illusory. And we see that in opioid addictions going up and suicides skyrocketing. And Putnam's dream not only of the collapse of American community, but also of the revival of American community, seems to continue to elude us. Accumulating more stuff, putting ourselves first, having more peak experiences, buying the latest cell phone, the fancier car, the bigger house, the rare musical instrument, they just don't work at meeting the needs of our hearts. And so instead of finding the Holy Grail, we end up with one more empty paper cup. And Isaiah says, "Ho, everyone who is thirsty." And if we're honest, we're thirsty for that living water to quench our souls. Come, buy and eat without money, without price. We need to hear good news of something that will meet the needs. And the prophet's words are for us, and especially for those who are unfortunately not very likely to hear them, for all of those same reasons. A month ago, Cheryl and I attended one of the meetings for the company Human Good, which is the parent company of Viverdi. And I'm the chair of the board at Viverdi, so we get to go to these. And they do this one really big meeting once a year they call the Big Connect. And staff from all of their 18 CCRCs and 60 affordable communities, plus the staff of the parent company and residents from some of the communities and board chairs and all those people, they all come together. And they have a speaker, an outside speaker at each of these events, who talks about something that's related to their core goals as a community, or as a company, I mean. And one of the taglines they have is, "the best life possible." Isn't that a good, I mean, what better thinking you have than that? Well, the speaker this year was a psychologist named Susan Pinker, and she's written a book recently, and her studies have been around the question of what makes people live longer and have happier lives. And she's gone to blue zones, those places where large numbers of people live past 100. And she's done, it's a serious academic study, it's not just a popular book, although it's worth looking at. And the book is titled The Village Effect: How Face-to-Face Contact Can Make Us Happier and Healthier. And some of the results are surprising. She has one chart in there that shows some of the more important things to do to make us live longer. And this chart doesn't specifically talk about happiness, but about longevity. And some of the things are surprising, like I would have expected from everything I've heard in my whole life that stopping smoking would have been right at the top. Wasn't. It's in the middle. With my history, I would have expected something like taking your heart medication to be right at the top. It's not. It's way down at the bottom. The two things at the very top, the two most important facets in making a person live longer, and she says also be happier, are strong relationships, and social integration. More than stopping smoking, more than losing weight, more than taking your blood pressure medications, social integration, that means being part of groups and strong relationships. I couldn't help but smile. I've seen other studies that tell us that belonging to a religious community makes you live longer, but most of them haven't really talked about the why of it. Pinker's work tells us why. Some of those earlier studies about religious communities have argued that having faith itself makes you live longer. Doesn't matter what you believe, they say, as long as you believe something. Or religious practices help you to live longer. Well, Pinker would say, no, that's not it. What makes us live longer is being together. Is having people who know you and like you anyway. And who are there for you, regardless of what's going on in your life. And when she was talking, I couldn't help but think, that's what church is about. That's what church is about. Community. It's about community. And I hear people say, oh, I can be a Christian without going to church. I'm like, that's bunk. Because that's not what it's not just about your relationship with God. As central as that is, your relationship to God requires community. Isaiah goes on, seek the Lord while he may be found, and we know that where we have found the Lord is in community. I think of that story of the little girl whose pet died, and she's sitting on the sidewalk crying, and an adult comes up and sits down next to her and says, what's wrong? And she says, my pet died. She says, it's okay, God will comfort you. And the little girl looks at the person and says, yeah, but sometimes I need skin on it. And we know that in our guts. Thoughts and prayers are never enough. Sometimes we need tears and arms and skin on it. And you and I here today know that when Jesus has skin on, it looks like these people sitting around us. That's Jesus with skin on. Here's the water, the wine, the milk. And frankly, it's not quite without cost, is it? Isaiah was overselling there. Because it takes time, it takes energy, it takes forgiveness. Because frankly, we're not all likable all the time, except me. It takes work to be community. It takes work. But if we do that work, we find ourselves happier, more whole, and, Lord have mercy, we even live longer. Here we are. Somebody might watch this on the web. There are people who watch these sermons on the web. So I would say, as wonderful as my sermons are, you're probably better off finding a church without such a wonderful preacher and going and be part of that, or a synagogue, or a mosque, or whatever. And for all of us who are part of community, to realize, and this is one of the pieces that Pinker talks about, she says, when you have a strong community, that makes it hard for people to get in. Because part of caring about each other is having that shared history and those memories and those dreams and all that. And when a new person comes in, it can be tough for them to kind of wiggle their way in. Well, we've got to be willing to say, we're going to be uncomfortable a little bit and let that happen too. And we're going to learn about this other person's problems that we really are going to need to forgive sometimes, just because that's what we're all about. We're not just about being community, but we're about building community. And that is the water, the living water, for which every human heart yearns. And we got it.